Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 364 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. And here at the Unpopular Podcast, and I really ask you to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. The NFL regular season is a long season. Let me start this episode by saying that. It is a long season. Usually teams that look one way in the beginning of the season usually look a different way at the end. It's just natural progression of an NFL season. Some teams look worse, some teams look better. It's just how the NFL season is. I'm pretty much starting this episode like that as a caveat to say that these are my opinions after week 2 of the NFL. Well, going into week 2 of the NFL season. You know, I don't want to make any rash decisions or rash life altering opinions about these teams because again, things can look different. For example, man, look at the Jets. The Jets from minute 1 of their season to now is drastically different. Obviously, with Aaron Rodgers going out. Let me not go off tangent. Let me talk about Thursday Night Football. Is pretty much the start of week 2 in the NFL. And we got the Eagles and the Vikings. The Eagles beat the Vikings 34-28. And after watching that game, I have a clear picture, at least, again, 2 weeks into the season, I have a clear picture of the Eagles and I have a clear picture of the Vikings. Now, again, this picture, my ideas and how I feel about these teams can change because I think it's obviously not smart to base an opinion and have a concrete opinion about something 2 weeks in. But let's talk about the Eagles first, because the Eagles had a lot more question marks going into this season than a lot of people led on to. You know, you lose a bunch of players on the defensive side of the ball. You lose, Miles Sanders. You lose both of your coordinators, both offensive and defensive. There was a lot of change from this, or there was a lot of change with this Eagles team. And also, a huge change, which a lot of people didn't really talk about, was the strength of schedule. Last year, Philly had one of the easiest, if not the easiest schedule in the NFL. This year, they have one of the hardest, if not the hardest schedule in the NFL. So, and I'm not just going to base how good they were on the schedule last year, but when you play weaker teams, that definitely helps. And it helps the team build momentum and helps the team, build camaraderie. And it just, a lot of times, it's easy wins. But now you're playing the hardest schedule that you need to know yourself going into these games or you will lose. So, while yes, you can look at the score and it says 34-28, the Eagles are now 2-0. And you can feel like the Eagles left off, or the Eagles picked up where they left off last season. And you can also say that this team is a Super Bowl caliber team because they won their first 2 games. And it doesn't look like that. There were times in both games where it didn't look like much competition. Now, yes, they did struggle mightily majority of the time when they played against the Patriots in the first game. And we'll talk about this Thursday Night Football game in a second. But on the surface, you can look at this Eagles team and say, oh, this Eagles team is the same type. They didn't, just because they lost 2 coordinators, just because they lost a bevy of defensive players, they are the same team. But when you're looking at this Eagles team, you have to look under the surface. And you have to really look at these games to understand that this team looks drastically different, at least 2 weeks in, than it did last year. Drastically different. I don't think that I'm not worried about the Eagles right now. And the reason why I'm not worried about the Eagles right now is because when you have the beauty of an NFL season, of a season in general in sports, is you have time. You have time to get it together. Now, some teams do, some teams don't, but you usually have time to figure things out. And when you have this much turnover and this much change from one season to another, you're going to need time to figure it out. You're going to need time. This offensive coordinator, this defensive coordinator, they're going to need time to understand which plays to call, which plays to design, when they should call it. It takes time. The quarterback and the offensive players need to develop a certain cadence, need to develop a certain relationship with their coordinator so that they can be on the same page. You don't just build that in the offseason. That's where you started, of course, but it takes the regular season to really do that. So once you get to the playoff, you're in prime position. But you would be foolish to just look at this Eagles 2-0 schedule or 2-0 record and think that this is the same Eagles team that we saw last year. Quiet as it's kept, Jalen Hurts has not been good these first two games. You can look at, Thursday Night Football and say, hey, he was 18 for 23, 193 yards. He also rushed 12 times for 35 yards. He has 3 touchdowns altogether. You can look at that and say Jalen Hurts is the same Jalen Hurts of last year. But again, the beauty of sports and the beauty of football is you have to look at the games. And if you look at the games, you can tell that Jalen Hurts, at least these first 2 games, has not seen the field the same way he saw last year. Or he doesn't have the same zip or the same accuracy in his passes that he did last year. Again, I'm not saying Jalen Hurts is falling off a cliff, but these last 2 games is not indicative of what he looked like last year. Now, again, it could be because of, you have a new offensive coordinator and you're still trying to learn the schemes. You're still trying to, figure things out. That could be the case. And if that is the case, then of course, this is just a 2-game evaluation. And he'll be fine. The Eagles be fine. I think they'll be fine by the end of the year, of course. But this team just doesn't look like the team, especially when you look at the rest of the NFC. And as painful as it is for me to say this as a fan, I'm looking at that Cowboys team. And you'd be a fool to think that Cowboys team isn't good enough to at the least compete for the NFC. And if we were looking today, if we're taking the 2-0 Eagles that we saw on Thursday Night Football and we took what we saw from week 1 of the Cowboys, I would pick the Cowboys. Same thing with the 49ers. I would pick the 49ers. Again, this is just an overreaction, obviously, because this is just 2 weeks into an 18-week or 17-week season. But what we thought the Eagles were going to do good, they do exceptional. And that is, of course, run the ball. The Eagles, like last year, that is one thing that carried over. You lose Miles Sanders and you pick up DeAndre Swift. And DeAndre Swift in Thursday Night Football had 28 carries for 175 yards. This Eagles team is a run-first team. On top of that, you can look at the numbers and be confused and be jaded. Like, again, 28 carries for 175 yards for DeAndre Swift. Devontae Smith had 4 receptions for 131 yards for 1 touchdown. You can look at that and think, oh, I don't know what you're talking about, Jalen. Like this team it looked great. No, it didn't. Mind you, you're still playing arguably the worst defense in football in the Minnesota Vikings, and we'll get to them in a second. The picture that was painted, or let me say this, leaving this game, I've come to the conclusion that this Eagles team is good. Or let me say, this Eagles team has the potential to be unstoppable. When you have the offensive line that they have, when you have Jalen Hurts, and I do believe that he's going to get better over the season and get better probably over these next few weeks. But when you have Jalen Hurts and his passing ability with his running ability, when you have DeAndre Swift, who I think is an improvement from Miles Sanders, and Miles Sanders was really good as well. When you have 2 wide receivers that can be number ones anywhere else, in AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. When you have a coaching staff that's trying to figure it out, but hopefully, they get on the right direction. And I'm not saying that they're just completely off, but what I'm saying is I'm gonna, from what I saw last year to this year, again, these first 2 games, it's no secret that Jalen Hurts is not seeing the field as well as he did last year, and the only thing that's changed in this whole equation is the coordinators. So I'm gonna give it time, but I think that the Eagles that we saw last year, the Eagles team that was blowing through people, the Eagles team that ultimately made it to the Super Bowl, I think that is possibly the Eagles team that we're seeing. Because think about it, Jalen Green has looked unstoppable these first 2 games. And he's a rookie. I think that you can argue that he is an early defensive rookie of the year candidate. I had him winning defensive rookie of the year, and I think that all the praise and everything I thought he would look like, he's looked like the first 2 games. I think the Eagles are going to be great, man. And in me thinking they're going to be great, I can't overlook the fact that they have not looked anywhere close to what they've looked like these first 2 weeks that they did last year. Now, again, I do think that that's going to change. So we'll see about that. And let's talk about the other side. Let's talk about the Vikings. And this is probably one of the first times in a while that I look at a Vikings loss and I'm not instantly blaming Kirk Cousins. I know that is, or let me not say that. Let me retract that. When the Vikings lose, especially these last 2 years, mainly it's been because of their porous defense. And that is honestly the biggest reason why they lost on Thursday. They have one of the worst defenses in football, if not the worst defense. Their defense couldn't stop the run to save their life on Thursday. Again, DeAndre Swift had 175 yards. Boston Scott had 40 yards. Jalen Hurts had 35. DeAndre Swift averaged 6.25 yards a carry. They couldn't stop a nosebleed. But for the first time in a while, I saw something that I haven't seen in a while. Let me say that. I saw something in that Minnesota Vikings loss, that I didn't expect to see. When you go into a Minnesota Vikings game, what do you expect to see? You expect to see the defense to be trash. That is what we saw on Thursday. You expect Justin Jefferson to go off. Justin Jefferson had 11 catches, for 159 yards. When you go into a Vikings, and by the way, shouts out to Justin Jefferson. I think he has like over 5,000 yards, which is like the second or the most for a Vikings player since Randy Moss. And I know that the graphic going around, which I don't know how or why the Chicago Bears caught the smoke, but he has more reception yards than any Chicago Bear wide receiver in their history, which is crazy to think about. But what I'm alluding to and what I'm getting to is this. The best player on the field on Thursday Night Football was Kirk Cousins. You can argue it's DeAndre Swift, and if you say it is DeAndre Swift, then I'm not upset with you. But I would say that the best player on the field was Kirk Cousins. 31 for 44, 364 yards, 4 touchdowns. He can't help the fact that his running back, Alexander Madison dropped a bunch of passes, or KJ Osborne dropped a bunch of passes. He can't help the fact that, or Kirk Cousins can't help the fact that Justin Jefferson was hit or was affected by, to me, the worst rule in football, and that is when you fumble the ball in the end zone, it's pretty much a touchback for the other team, and I think that's terrible, man. If anything, at least give the offensive team the ball at the 5-yard line or something. But just to completely give it to the other team and give them good field position is crazy. What I'm saying is, this is the first time where I can look at this Minnesota Vikings team and I don't really give much blame to Kirk Cousins. Again, to me, outside of DeAndre Swift, Kirk Cousins was far better than Jalen Hurts. Let me say that. And I like Jalen Hurts, but Kirk Cousins was far better than him on Thursday. And I also feel that both of these teams are going in opposite directions. That's not true. I feel that watching this game on Thursday, and it's as close as it was because the Vikings made a furious comeback at the end, because I think they were down 20 points at one point. To me, this Vikings team, we have seen the best of this Vikings team. Kirk Cousins has the game of his life, and we know that Kirk Cousins struggles in prime time. Again, he was arguably the best player for both teams on Thursday, prime time. But I feel the Vikings have plateaued because you know what you're getting from the Vikings. There's no more Dalvin Cook, so you're not going to get those games. I don't think Alexander Madison is going to go crazy. He had 8 carries for 28 yards. How do I know this? Because he's on my fantasy team, and for some reason, I started him. And he had a fumble for loss. I ain't forget. But I just feel like we've seen the best of this Minnesota Vikings team. I feel like they're just going in a straight line. You know that Justin Jefferson's going to be good. You know that Kirk Cousins is going to have those games where he's incredible. Then he's going to have those games where he did game 1, where he has 3 or 4 turnovers. You know the defense is going to be terrible. Yet they're going to be in the game, or they're going to get blown out. I just feel like there is a upward trajectory with this Philadelphia Eagles team, and there's such a stagnant line with this Minnesota Vikings team. to the point where 2 games in, you have the Jets talk, or you have people talking about Kirk Cousins to be traded to the Jets because of the Aaron Rodgers loss. Shouts out and congratulations to the Philadelphia Eagles for beating the Minnesota Vikings on Thursday Night Football 34-28. Like I said, Thursday Night Football pretty much is the doorway in the beginning of the week for the football season, or for the football week. And I am going to give my predictions for week 2 of the NFL. The first game is Green Bay Packers at the Falcons. I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I really liked what I saw from both teams. I was pleasantly surprised about how good Jordan Love looked. Now, I do want to preface him by saying that he played arguably the worst defense in football and arguably the worst team overall in football in the Chicago Bears. And it doesn't get much harder with the Atlanta Falcons, but I will say the Atlanta Falcons have a better defense than the Chicago Bears. But if we talk about the totality of the team, I like the Green Bay Packers in this one. I think the defense is going to be humming. I think that they're trying to get on a roll, and they're trying to support Jordan Love as much as they can, especially when you talk about Aaron Jones and the running game. Now Bijan Robinson did look good, but I like the Packers beating the Falcons. The next game, you have the Raiders at Bills. Let me tell you something. The Raiders. This is one of those trap games. If the Bills beat the Jets in week 1, because the Bills lost, I think the Bills are upset. I think the Bills are going to be hungry. I think that Josh Allen is going to come out trying to prove, because he's heard a lot of talk, and I've said some things as well. Obviously, he's not listening to me, but Josh Allen is he's more than likely has something to say about all the people that's pretty much saying he's reckless and this isn't a Super Bowl team with him at the helm. I just think that the Raiders picked the absolute worst time to see the Buffalo Bills. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to beat the Raiders quite easily. Not to mention, the Raiders don't have that good of a defense outside of course, Max Crosby. I don't think Chandler Jones is playing yet. So, and he's kind of going to war with the coach and the GM. So, I have the Bills beating the Raiders. Ravens at Bengals. I think this is a sneaky important game for both teams. I think this is a very important game for the Bengals to get back on track. We know how bad they looked last week going against the Browns. And the Ravens, this is their first legit test. Obviously, it's only week 2. And the first week they play C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans. But this is, I obviously think that the Ravens are a Super Bowl caliber team because I picked the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. This is the first test. Not to mention, I don't know how good Joe Herbert, Jesus loves you. I don't know how good Joe Burrow is going to be after week 2. Again, he didn't play the preseason. He didn't really practice in the offseason at all because of his injury, his hamstring injury. So I think that this is, and the offensive line is still not the best. So I think that the Ravens, Roquan Smith, and that defense is going to try to get to Joe Burrow. And I think that this is a very sneaky important game for the Ravens. So I have Baltimore beating the Bengals. I just think it's going to take more than 2 weeks, especially two weeks against two very good defenses. I think it's going to take more for Joe Burrow to get more acclimated and everything. So I have the Ravens being the Bengals. Seahawks at Lions. Oh, man. The talk around the Seahawks is crazy, man. It's interesting how the narrative for these teams or about these teams change week to week. It's like a pendulum. And going into week 1, a lot of people thought and had expectations that this Seahawks team was good enough to arguably make some noise in the NFC in general. Now, if you look today, and they lost to the Rams, and if you hear the rhetoric and the conversation around the Seahawks, all you're hearing is, were they a one-hit wonder? And when I mean one-hit wonder, was last year a fluke? Are we going to see the real Geno Smith? Are we going to see the real Seattle Seahawks? And it's only week 2, and the Lions. I think the Lions are going to win this game. 1, they're at home. 2, they've had the most rest. I mean, the last time they played was the Kansas City Chiefs, in the first game of the season. I think Thursday Night Football last week. I think that the Lions are going to win, but I also do think that the Seahawks are going to be okay. I don't know if they're going to make noise in the playoffs. I do think they're going to make the playoffs. I just don't know, you pump your brakes on the people that's kind of throwing away the Seahawks after week 1, but I have the Lions beating the Seahawks. Damn, they're about to be 0-2. Colts at Texans. I think that this is a very interesting game, obviously, because the quarterbacks, you have Anthony Richardson going against C.J. Stroud. I'm going to pick the Texans, though, because I like the Texans' That's tough, because I do like the Colts defense and DeForest Buckner. I like Zaire Franklin. But that Texan, that's I think that's kind of like a pick'em game. You know what? I'm gonna change my mind. I'm gonna go with the Colts. I like their bevy of defensive players, along with Anthony Richardson and everything. So, and don't get me wrong, I like the Texans, especially what I saw out of the Texans last week against the Ravens. Even though they did lose, I got the Colts winning, because the Colts almost beat the Jaguars, and the Jaguars are pretty good. So I got the Colts beating the Texans. A sneaky important game is the Chiefs at Jaguars. I think the Jaguars are for real this year. I don't know. I don't think that they're as good as, Super Bowl caliber, but I do think that the Jaguars are for real. I think that they have a real defense. I think that Trevor Lawrence continues to get better week after week. I think this coaching staff is great. I think that the running back, Travis Etienne, he's really good. This is gone are the days where the Jaguars was an easy win, or the Jaguars was that team that when you play sports, and there's always a team that we're gonna get our rhythm on. This should be an easy win. We shouldn't struggle. This is a team where, in basketball terms, this is a team where you try stuff out with them, like you try weird lineups, or this is this team that they're not really going to give you much resistance, so you try some of your personal moves that you haven't really tried on anybody else. That's what the Jaguars have been for a while. They had that one year with Jalen Ramsey, and they made it to the AFC Championship. But outside of that year, this Jaguars team has been pretty much a bottom feeder. That is not who these Jaguars are today. And there are there are major question marks with this Kansas City Chiefs team after week 1. And the reason why a lot of people are pushing the panic button a little harder on the Chiefs just 2 weeks in is because of the questions going into the season are the problems that we saw week 1 against the Lions. The biggest question mark was the wide receiver core. Well, when you talk about Kadarius Toney and you talk about the entire wide receiver core, Kadarius Toney himself, I think, dropped 3 or 4 passes, like point blank important passes. And while we know how great Travis Kelce is, everyone else on that core, and Travis Kelce obviously is a tight end, but everyone else in that wide receiver core had question marks. And on top of that, what is going to happen when I'll say this. I think that this is the best defense that the Kansas City Chiefs probably has now with Chris Jones. Not having Chris Jones was huge in week 1, but with Chris Jones back, I think that this is the best defense that Patrick Mahomes has had his entire life. And it really bodes how it really showed. Chris Jones' importance really showed by just how they couldn't really get a stop, especially at the end of the game against the Lions. But the question is the question coming is there too much on Patrick Mahomes' shoulders? I say all that to say this, man. I think that this is a sneaky important game because I myself need to see the Chiefs look good. This should be, even though, I heaped as much praise as I did about the Jaguars, this game should be a win for the Chiefs, even though they are in Jacksonville. I want to see Mahomes look like old Mahomes. Hopefully Travis Kelce plays. If he doesn't play, I think that that's a huge problem. I think Kadarius Toney is going to be better, but I just don't think that they have a number one receiver on that team. At least right now. But you can go back to the conversation we had about the Eagles, and I do expect them to get better, but right now it's looking iffy. But I will say that I just feel this is a much more important game, even though it is 2 weeks in. I think this is a much more important game for the Chiefs. So I think the Chiefs are going to win this game against the Jaguars. Yeah. You got the Bears at Buccaneers. Honestly, man, I think after watching week 1, it's hard for me not to say that the Bears, outside of Justin Fields, and Justin Fields didn't even look good a lot of the times. I don't know if the Bears might have one of, if not the worst team in football, outside of possibly the Giants right now. But I don't even know about the Giants because it could just be you're playing against a much more superior team than the Cowboys. But I like what I saw out of Baker Mayfield and this Buccaneers team. The problem with Baker Mayfield is you need to be consistent with it. There are times when Baker Mayfield, like he did last week, looks incredible. Then there are times where he just has some of the worst plays, worst interceptions you've ever seen. So I do need to see some type of consistency. But I do think that they're going to win this game. I just don't like this Bears team is. It's so bad that one of your key acquisitions last year in what's his name? Claypool. He's more than likely a healthy scratch, meaning he's probably going to be up out of there soon. So, yeah, man, I got the Buccaneers winning that one. Chargers at Titans. I have the Chargers. I just think that the Chargers are a much better team. And I trust Justin Herbert more than I trust Ryan Tannehill, obviously. I do think that the Chargers It's not like they couldn't stop the run game. They just couldn't stop Tyreek Hill and Tua Tagovailoa last week. Well, Ryan Tannehill and DeAndre Hopkins or anybody else is not Tyreek Hill and Tua. So I think the Chargers. Now, yes, you do have Derrick Henry is tough, but I have the Chargers beating that game. Giants at Cardinals. Let me tell you something. Get close. If the Giants don't beat the Cardinals, who could very well be the worst team in football, if the Giants do not beat the Cardinals, or I'll say this, if the Giants look anywhere close to the Giants that we saw in week 1, I think I don't like saying this, and I'm not trying to overreact in week 2, but if the Giants lose to the Arizona Cardinals, the season is over for the Giants. I think boy, you're talking about the noise that you're hearing about Daniel Jones now is loud. Imagine losing to the I'm not even going to say losing big. Imagine losing to the Cardinals after Daniel Jones gets that money after, the holdout with Saquon Barkley, then that he ultimately got the money. If the Giants need this win, and I'm going to pick the Giants to win, but they need this win. Trust me, they do. And they know they do. The 49ers at Rams, I think it's going to be a good game, but I think after watching the 49ers just dismantle the Steelers in week 1, I think that currently it's hard for me to not pick the 49ers as the best team in football right now, because that's what they look like week 1. The Rams look really good too, but what I'm nervous about is, of course, Cooper Rush. He's still not back, and their top wide receivers was Tutu Atwell and Puka Nada or something. I'm sorry I messed your name up, bro, but what I'm saying is I don't know how much you can keep that up against the 49ers. And the Seahawks doesn't have that much of a pass. Well, their Seahawks pass rush is much different than the 49ers pass rush. So I don't know how clean of a pocket Matthew Stafford's going to have. So I have the 49ers beating the Rams. Jets at Cowboys. The Jets are trying to sell us on Zach Wilson, which I think is hilarious. So I get it. Don't get me wrong. I get it, because you don't want to lose the fans. You don't want to just throw away the season. You don't want to make it seem like it's over for the season, but it is. And that they know it's over, because while yes, they're trying to big up Zach Wilson, you're also hearing names like, Colin Kaepernick come back in the picture, or trade for Kirk Cousins or Nick Foles or Cam Newton. You're hearing them having to bring in another quarterback. And trust me, if they find a way, which I doubt is going to happen, but if they find a way to get Kirk Cousins, Zach Wilson's going right back on that bench. So it's over. It's over. And what's also hilarious to me is they're trying to sell us on Zach Wilson just a year ago that they gave up on him. Like, I don't know if people remember, but they started Mike White over Zach Wilson. And I'll give you $1 if you can tell me where Mike White is right now. What I'm saying is this season is over if Zach Wilson is going to be the starting quarterback for the entire season, or for the foreseeable future, until, of course, Aaron Rodgers gets back. And you're playing against a Cowboys team, which I'm not there yet, but I'm close to saying could be the best team in the NFC. Imagine the Cowboys making it to the playoff. Making it to the Super Bowl is crazy. I got the Cowboys beating the Jets. I do think that you can argue that the Cowboys have the second best defense, maybe even the first best defense in the NFC. I think it's right now is between the Cowboys and the 49ers. And that's the last thing you want to go against if you're the Jets and you have to trust Zach Wilson. So I have the Cowboy, and you're in Jerry World, so I have the Cowboys winning that. Commanders at Broncos. Hey, man. First of all, shouts out to Chase Young. Chase Young is cleared to play for week 2. I'm excited about that. And honestly, I don't like what I saw from the Broncos week 1. Obviously, they lost. And when you start the game with an onside kick, this is your very first regular season game as a head coach for this team. I don't really like what I'm seeing. So now I was not happy at all with what I saw with the Commanders' offensive line. And that's always been a problem for them. But I do like what I saw out of Sam Howell at times. So I'm gonna upset. I'm gonna go with the Commanders beating the Broncos. I think that defensive front is incredible, especially with Chase Young coming back. And I didn't really like the Broncos offensive line. I know that most of them, if not all of them, are new. So it's going to take some time. But, yeah, I got the Broncos losing and the Commanders winning. The Dolphins at Patriots. Look here. I see a lot of people in my comments, bro. Here's the thing. I understand that players have a track record, right? Like it's almost naive to think that Kawhi Leonard is going to play all 82 games, or Anthony Davis is going to play all 82 games, or on the football side, any NFL player is going to play all the games. It's now, yeah, it happens obviously, but not that much. Not like, come on. But you're hearing a lot of people like hoping and wishing that Tua gets hurt. So that's what I'm realizing about sports media, about some of these other podcasters, and about some fans in general. They hope for things just so their opinions can be right, not because they don't. It doesn't make sense. It makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. You have a lot of people in my comments because I put a reel out and I talked about last week that Tua Tagovailoa and Tyreek Hill are arguably one of, if not the best duo in football right now. And you have everyone saying, no, I hope Tyreek, not everyone, but a lot of people are saying, Tyreek Hill is going to get hurt week 3, or I hope, not Tyreek Hill, Tua's going to get hurt week 3, or I hope Tua gets hurt, or, he's going to tear his ACL. Like, damn, bro. Let's just hope for health. You know what I'm saying? Let's hope that he is healthy. Like let's hope for that. And I think that the Dolphins are much better than the Patriots, even though they are playing in Foxborough. But and it's Monday Night Football. But I got the Dolphins beating the Patriots. This week we actually have two Monday Night Football games. We have the Saints at Panthers, and we have the Browns at Steelers. The first game, I have the Saints beating the Panthers. I still don't like Derek Carr's red zone efficiency, or the Saints red zone efficiency. And I am interested to see, now of course we're not going to see it for another 2-3 weeks, but I am interested to see what Derek Carr looks like with or alongside a weapon like Alvin Kamara. But I just like the Saints over the Panthers. It's going to take time for a rookie quarterback, especially a rookie quarterback with the team that he had, with a team like the Panthers and Bryce Young. It's going to take him time to really develop and really get comfortable being a starting quarterback in the NFL. And it's tough when you have to go against the Saints. So, and that defense is crazy with Cam Jordan and everything. I think the Saints are going to win. And this is a very important game for the Steelers, and that is the Browns at Steelers. I'm not saying that the Steelers have to win. I'm not saying that. But kind of like the Giants, the Steelers was so inept in week 1. And what's crazy about it is I was so high, and I'm not saying that I'm just abandoning, but I was so high on the Steelers coming into this season because of the preseason. In the preseason, you can argue that the Steelers were the best team in football in the preseason. And they looked drastically different in week 1 than they did in the preseason. Kenny Pickett looked more like the Kenny Pickett of last year and looked like Cameron Hayward. He's going to be out for a few weeks or I think it's a week 8 because he had groin surgery, I think. This is an important game for the Steelers. Again, I'm not saying they have to win, but they have to look much better than they did. Oh boy, than they did on Sunday. But honestly, man, I do like their defense, but I don't like their offense because of what I saw from Kenny Pickett, and I like the Browns' defense, especially the number that they did to the Bengals. I got the Browns winning this. Right now, I trust Deshaun Watson, even though Deshaun Watson didn't look good last year, or last game. I'm sorry. I don't think Deshaun Watson looked good in week 1, but they did ultimately win it. I like Deshaun Watson more than I like Kenny Pickett right now. And I kind of hope that I'm wrong about this because I don't want the Steelers to just be terrible. I'm not saying I don't really care if they win or not. I just don't want them to get destroyed. I have the Browns winning. So those are my predictions, man. Those are my predictions, and that is who I think is going to win. Let me know how you guys feel. Let me know if what team you like and if they're gonna win. Leave it in the comments. We'll talk about it. So let's move on, and I'm gonna move on to a serious topic. Because I had a couple people ask me why I didn't talk about the Kevin Porter Jr. situation with his significant other. He obviously was accused of just brutally beating her to the point where she was like covered in blood and stuff. He was ultimately arrested for it. One of the main reasons why I didn't address it when it happened is because I think one of the most irresponsible things to do is to address something that A, you don't know what really happened or not, and B, addressing something when you don't have the full knowledge of what you're going to say. Because I think in instances like that, when you don't know exactly what to, you know how you feel, but you don't know what to say. I think in instances like that, that is when you set yourself up for failure, and that's when you get in trouble. When you just say things that you don't really know what you're saying, you don't have a plan on saying it, and you're pretty much just doing vomit of the mouth. And at that point, it's like, all right, you put your foot in your mouth, and you done messed up. So I wanted to take some time to obviously hear more information, and I wanted to gather what I was going to say. At this point, we still don't know exactly what happened. I know what Kevin Porter Jr. is accused of. And I know that if, and I'm going to say if, not because I'm an apologist, but if he did it, he should be in jail, obviously. Because just let's put aside that this is just, what he's accused of doing. Let's just put aside the fact that he did this to a woman. He did this to another person. And if he is guilty of what he is accused of, then he could have very much killed his girlfriend. I'm not going to say obviously because some people don't know. I was raised by my mother. Obviously, she was a single mother. And I grew up with my younger sister and now my niece. So I've grown up and I've been around women my entire life. So of course I have a soft spot for women. You know what I'm saying? Not like that, obviously, but I never want to see a woman getting beat. It doesn't make me feel good to hear, stories like this. And I know how I would react if I was called and a young man put hands on my sister to the point where she could have possibly died. I know how I would react. Actually, I don't know how I react because kind of like Stephen A. Smith, that's like an outer body situation, So I'm not going to talk much about what happened because all of this is, of course, alleged and he's accused of it. So he's not guilty yet. But what I will say is if he did do it, first, I hope that his girlfriend, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce her name, Karish. I'm sorry, I'm sure I messed your name up, but I hope that she's okay. I hope that she's mentally in a good place or in a better place. I hope that she is on her road to physical recovery as well as mental recovery and emotional recovery, because whether it happened or not, how they're saying it happened, she was covered in blood. She did have a broken neck vertebrae. She did have visible scars, and I hope that she recovers from this completely. So I definitely pray for her strength and her overcoming this. But what I mainly wanted to focus on is, I come on here and I don't really like calling it that, but you can kind of say that I bash the NFL for how light they are when it comes to domestic violence compared to how heavy it is, how heavy of a punishment you get for something like gambling. And I've said on this podcast several times, because this has happened several times, that the NFL cares more about sports gambling and their how the fans view them more than domestic violence. Because at the end of the day, domestic violence is a you problem. You got to go figure that out, not us. I've always criticized the NFL for that. And now it's time to criticize the NBA. Because the report that you're hearing now is that the Houston Rockets, outside of just letting Kevin Porter Jr. go, waiving him, dropping him, cutting him from the team, they're trying to trade him. Meaning that there are trade partners that would take on Kevin Porter Jr. Now, more than likely, they'll probably waive him, but because they're trying to get off contracts or whatever. But you have to understand that we're talking about a young woman that damn near died. Of course, all of this is he was accused of it. So I don't know if it's true or not. I'm just going by what the reports are saying. But the reports are saying that the person that's on the Houston Rockets, Kevin Porter Jr., was accused of damn near killing his girlfriend. And instead of doing the right thing, I see in business, the thing that gets lost the most, in my opinion, are morals. Why would you want somebody on your team? Or why would you want to represent somebody that is accused of something like that? And from what the reports are saying, again, I'm not going to cast assumptions or cast verdicts on anybody because I'm not the courts. But what the reports are saying is monstrous. To the point where this man shouldn't be worried about the next team he's going to be on. This man should be worrying about if he's going to jail and for how long, if this is true. And I don't think you don't understand how bad the optics look. That especially in today's age, somebody getting accused of something like that, and the next report you're hearing is the Rockets are engaged with other teams to try to trade for Kevin Porter Jr., meaning that you have a team that doesn't just want to drop him because they want to get something from him, something off of him. Then you have another team willing to pick him up and give up something for him. And don't get me wrong, bro. I understand that, Kevin Porter Jr. is a decent player. But he ain't no type of player that you go to war for this. Like, he ain't no franchise changer. What I'm saying is this, bro. And this is the last thing I'll say about this topic. I pray that the young lady, again, I think her name is Karish. I'm sure I said your name wrong. I apologize. I hope that she has a full physical, emotional, mental recovery from this. And I pray that she gets the help that she needs. And if it is true, and I keep saying if because, again, I wasn't there. If it is true, I hope that Kevin Porter Jr. gets the help that he needs, because that is a mental thing, that you can almost kill somebody because they had a door locked. I hope that he gets the help that he needs. And I also hope that he gets the help that he needs behind bars, if this is true. And for the Houston Rockets and the NBA to come out and say that they're trying to actively trade him instead of just cutting their losses is disgusting. And we can bash the NFL for, bringing back or bringing back women beaters and championing them, or sexual assault accusers, or people killed Deshaun Watson to this day for what he was accused of. Kevin Porter Jr. was accused of damn near killing his girlfriend. I just don't see how that can sit right with anybody if it is true. So we'll see. And lastly, before we go, and I guess you can say this is the unpopular topic of the day. I did this before when I was talking about DeMarcus Cousins. There's a handful of players that is not in the NBA anymore that obviously is good enough to be in the NBA. DeMarcus Cousins was one of them. Is one of them, because he's still not in the NBA. Dwight Howard's another one. And I talked when I was talking about DeMarcus Cousins, I said that perception is everything in sports. You can be as great as you are, and honestly, you can be a quote unquote problem if you're talented. I always hearken back to Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown was a headache everywhere he was. The difference and the thing about Antonio Brown is he's also arguably one of the greatest wide receivers the NFL has ever seen. So, of course, he's going to get shot after shot after shot after shot. I told DeMarcus Cousins that if he wants to get back in the league, he has to find a way to change the perception about him. Because the thing about sports is it's a big relationship, honestly. It's how is your relationship with your teammates? How is your relationship with your coach? How is your relationship with the fan base? What people don't understand at times is basketball and sports is so much more than just being good at whatever sport you play. That is very important, but it's also about relationships. That's about anything in life. I work in an industry, right, where it doesn't really matter much about college. It matters more about who you know and what you're good at. The relationships that you garnish, the relationships that you build. Who do you know? I said, yo, DeMarcus Cousins, if you want to be back in the league, you have to change the perception about yourself. Now let's get to Dwight Howard. The people that know me and people that listen to this podcast, they understand that I view Dwight Howard as a basketball player very high. I think that he should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think that he should be in the NBA 75, or he should have been in the NBA 75 over people like maybe Anthony Davis or Damian Lillard. People know Dwight Howard was one of the first players to be drafted straight out of high school that was successful. People know how I feel about Dwight Howard and how I think that he was one of the most dominant centers of all time when he was with Orlando. And his career was criminally robbed by not only injuries, but it was robbed by how successful he was. And what I mean by that is, it's very hard to ask someone to change something and to develop something when you've been uberly successful at what you're doing. At what you're doing has gotten you, a three-time defensive or three consecutive defensive player of the year awards, or it's gotten you multiple All-Stars. It's gotten you to the NBA Finals. It's hard for you to then to say, all right, now you have to develop this, because all you're seeing is the success that you're getting from what you are now. So I think that injuries and just how good he was plagued in his inability to develop a more sustainable post game is what really affected Dwight Howard as far as his quote unquote drop off. But let's look at Dwight Howard's resume for a second. He's an NBA champion, 8-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA first team. Once he made All-NBA second team, 2-time All-NBA third team. Like I said, 3 consecutive NBA Defensive Player of the Year awards, 4-time NBA Defensive All-Team or All-First Team, 1-time All-Second Team, Rookie of the Year, 5-time NBA Rebounds Leader, 2-time NBA Rebound or Blocks Leader. The reason why Dwight Howard is not in the NBA right now. Now, of course, all this has been sparked because the Golden State Warriors are having a meeting with Dwight Howard. Because we know the Golden State Warriors lacks height and just needs height. And Dwight Howard, of course, is 6'11", or 6'10", 6'11", he could definitely help. The reason why Dwight Howard is not in the league is because of perception. Kind of the same thing that DeMarcus Cousins is dealing with, just a little different. DeMarcus Cousins is dealing with, his perception is he can't get along with his teammates. He is aggressive. He's angry. He can't get along with his coaches. He's uncoachable. That's not Dwight Howard's problem. Dwight Howard's problem is his perception is he's too playful and he takes things serious. He doesn't take anything serious, or he doesn't take basketball serious, or he feels that he should be more dominant or he should be better than he really is. Like, you get on a team with Kobe Bryant and you think that you deserve to have more shots than him. You get on a team with James Harden in his prime and you think you deserve more touches than James Harden. It just doesn't compute. If we're just talking about pure skill, Dwight Howard deserves to be on an NBA team, especially when you see the players that are an NBA team. But listen to this. A player that is an NBA, that is a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year and has all the accolades and one of the greatest defensive centers we've ever seen. Dwight Howard will go down. I'll say it again. He will go down as one of the greatest defensive players we've ever seen in basketball. And he's only, how old is Dwight Howard? He's only 37. Ooh, shit. 37. But listen to this, man. A player that dominant. And remember his Orlando years. Dwight Howard played for Orlando, the Lakers twice, Houston, Atlanta, Charlotte, and the Wizards. Oh, and the 76ers. Completely forgot about that. And now playing for, playing in Taiwan. Dwight Howard. I think it's a little too late for him to develop a solid, post game. But if you want to get back on an NBA team, the way to do that is to allow people to know that you can adapt and you can be what the team needs you to be. Because imagine if you go to Golden State, you're going to be important, bro. And it's about perception. If you, again, just like I said about DeMarcus Cousins, Dwight Howard, if you can change the perception that people have about you, you can change the outcome of situations like this. And there you have it. That's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want a Popular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the Instagram. Please subscribe to TikTok. I'm trying to, I post pretty much daily. I post my reels there. It definitely means a lot. We can have Discord conversation. Subscribe to the socials. And also subscribe to the YouTube, man. I reached over 1,000 subscribers, and I'm trying to see how far we can go, as much we can build. So it definitely mean a lot to me. And until next time, much love.